Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. Today I bring you David Burkus. Ever since I finished my career as a Division I All-American athlete, I longed for not only the clarity of purpose that I had as an athlete, but also the accountability that comes with aspiring for big goals with a team of like-minded people. Then I discovered mastermind groups. Masterminds are small groups of like-minded people who get together either in person or over Skype or just over the phone to provide support, feedback, and advice to other members of the group. So I dove in and I learned all I could about mastermind groups, and then I finally launched my own. And the change was instant. I regained the accountability of being part of a group of like-minded, hardworking individuals who hold me to a higher standard. My mastermind group helps me get feedback and advice and even validation when I'm making big decisions in my life. And I have clarity and focus and accountability again, just like when I was an athlete. I've now facilitated dozens of high performers in mastermind groups. I'm talking Olympians and MBAs and neurosurgeons and professional athletes and entrepreneurs and lots of others. I've taken everything you need to know to start your own mastermind group, and I've put it into a short 10-page ebook titled The Quick and Easy Guide to Starting Your Own Mastermind Group in 30 Days or Less. Grab a copy of this free ebook by going to jimharshawjr.com/mastermind. That's jimharshawjr.com/mastermind. David is a best-selling author, a sought-after speaker, and associate professor of leadership and innovation at Oral Roberts University. His forthcoming book, Friend of a Friend, offers readers a new perspective on how to grow their networks and build key connections, one based on the science of human behavior, not rote networking advice. He's delivered keynotes to the leaders of Fortune 500 companies and the future leaders of the United States Naval Academy. His TED Talk has been viewed over 1.8 million times, and he's a regular contributor to the Harvard Business Review. And for the listener, as usual, if you don't have time to listen to the entire episode, or if you hear something you like, make sure you grab your free copy of the action plan. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. David, welcome to the show.
Oh, Jim, thank you so much for having me.
Talking just a few minutes here before we hit the record button. You and I share at least a little background in our interest in me and wrestling and you and BJJ. So that's great. We've got a lot of former athletes who listen to this show, and certainly not an insignificant amount of them have a wrestling background just due to my connections in the wrestling community. But David, tell us a little bit about your background, just kind of 30,000 foot view, kind of where'd you grow up and sort of how you got from there to where you're at now.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I gotta do is ask why they're former athletes. I mean, I know that, you know, once the NCAA stops, there's not a lot of wrestling opportunity. But come on, man, come to the gym, do some BJJ. We got you. You can be a current athlete, not a former one.
Yeah, good point.
So I grew up in the Northeast of the U.S. Went to university thinking I wanted to be a writer. I mean, I guess I knew I wanted to be a writer because I am one. But, you know, when you're 18 years old, you think like the big choice, the big dilemma in your life is, are you going to be the Ernest Hemingway, the brilliant but poor novelist, or are you going to be James Patterson, the sellout, but you're going to be able to eat, right? And it was in university that I got exposed to a lot of other genres, in particular, sort of the social science genre. So I was in university when Malcolm Gladwell's first book came out. The Heath brothers shortly after that, Dan Pink, all of these people that I'm still an admirer of, that did a beautiful job telling a story, but then backing it up with social science. And so I left university thinking, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I didn't do it right away because I wanted to eat, and my wife wanted to go to medical school, so the responsibility for food fell on me. But I went back to graduate school eventually to study exactly that. The whole goal was to come out of graduate school and I knew the knowledge of writing and storytelling from undergrad. Then I knew all of the science from studying organizational psychology in grad school, and set to work writing. And really early on, one of the things I found was that, it doesn't, as you build a platform, it doesn't pay very well. So I've been a professor for the last 6 years. I still technically have a full-time appointment, which is awesome for the university to grant me because I only teach like a class a year. But the library and database access is fantastic.
Good perks.
Right. Totally. So, but it's really sort of that I'm kind of that accidental professor, right? Because it's really more about like, okay, I have these concepts, I learn these things, and so I can teach them, but it also affords me a lot of time to do that writing and platform building. And so, yeah, now we've written 3 books, all of them, and even in my teaching are geared at one thing, which is trying to break down complex ideas that are intimidating, and make them easy to understand. Or I often say I'm trying to get good ideas out of the ivory tower and into the corner office or the co-working space or the coffee shop or wherever work gets done so that people can work smarter.
Awesome. And, so you have another book coming out, and it's called Friend of a Friend, and it's about networking. And of course, David, we've talked about networking on this show before, but it's something that remains uncomfortable for a lot of people. So before we get into your different philosophy about networking, can you just kind of reiterate why it's so important? I mean, can't we just get by on our own merits?
I mean, sure. But if no one knows what those merits are, I don't know how you're going to get by on them. Like that's the whole point. And really, I don't know how you're going to have the merits either. I mean, fundamentally, like there are these like trite phrases like your network is your net worth and all of those kind of things. And they're true. They're a little corny, but they're true in the sense that your connections and your relationships are your source of information, right? Even in sort of an internet age, you might not feel like you're getting it from someone else, but someone else typed up that article that you're reading about that something, right? And if a relationship with that person who wrote it would make you smarter and have that sort of more information. So, it's not just the idea of like, how do people know about your merits? It's also how do you even achieve those merits, because you need that information flow. You need that learning and growth. And it only, even in 2018, it still comes from other people. I mean, there might be a day when like everything you need to know, some AI algorithm is going to give you. But the truth is even that would have been coded by a human, right? So we still rely on others for all of the information and growth that we have.
And how is your philosophy different? You talk about this being based on the science of human behavior. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, fundamentally, most people, when I say the word networking, they think about going to a cocktail party, trying to meet total strangers and figure out if they're useful to you, right? And getting uncomfortable with that. So standing in the corner of the room, like stirring their drink, talking to someone they already know, figuring out how to leave without being noticed, right?
Yes, and we've all been there.
Exactly. I think that's because fundamentally we have a weird mental model when it comes to networking. We think that it's about just adding names to our contacts app or connections to LinkedIn or some other sort of vanity metric like that. And I don't think that's the case. I think the appropriate mental model for networking is not making new connections, but you already exist inside of a network. It's not something you have, it's something that you are in. And so the best response, the best way to act accordingly is to figure out, okay, let me learn about the network that's around me. That's my close connections, but also my weak and dormant ties. That's who's connected to who. That's where we are in capacity to a lot of other groups that might have differing information, et cetera. It's really, if you go from that two-dimensional, okay, it's just a scrolling list of contacts on my phone, to it's a three-dimensional diagram of here's how everyone around me is connected to everyone else, you have a much deeper, richer experience in networking because you don't have to meet strangers all of the time. But the other thing is that the information that you're providing them and that they're providing you is a little more useful because you have a richer context for why you're even talking to that person.
So you're talking about changing your mindset around it, right?
Yeah, I mean, very much, or your mental model, or just even that picture. Like if the only thing people take away from the book or this interview is just that like networking means more than adding a new name on my contacts app on my phone, then perfect. Like we've adopted the right. There's a little bit more than that, but we've flipped the mental model, and that's what I'm excited about.
Well, tell us about that a little bit more. I mean, what does this look like when the rubber meets the road?
Yeah. So, I mean, fundamentally, the biggest thing is, again, if we're trying to just add new contacts to our phone, we're not paying attention to where they came from, et cetera, then we're going to end up at those networking mixers, and they're a little boring and a little awkward and a little uncomfortable. And actually, the social science research supports that they really don't work because we stick to that comfort zone. We don't meet new people. We end up spending time with people we know. But if we know that, okay, I want to get a more diverse set of connections, I want to meet new people, and I choose to go to an event where there's sort of a shared activity, where there's something at stake that is bigger or higher than just meeting new people. It could be literally anything. It could be volunteering for a nonprofit board. It could be playing a pickup sport. One of my friends organizes these dinner parties where no one's allowed to talk about who they are and what they do, but they have to cook the dinner together. So the mere act of I have to figure out how to get along with 11 other people means that I have to get to know them on a deeper level. So you end up with a more diverse set of connections. You end up building a deeper relationship faster than those sort of awkward settings. But the truth is, you don't even really need to go to either of those. Because again, if we're thinking about a network as this three-dimensional thing, this sort of lines and circles. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, run to Google image search as you're listening and you'll see a bunch of images of networks. You'll get what I mean. But most of the time, every opportunity, every connection that you need, you can find a way through your existing network to meet that person, whether it be an introduction or whether it be finding yourself in that situation where sort of they are because you get information from your friends about how to reach out to them. There, you have most of the people that you know can give you access to most of the people that you need to know to grow your career. So you don't have to do that sort of hope and pray cocktail party strategy. You can really just start figuring out who's where in my network and start navigating it appropriately.
How have you seen networking benefiting people? I mean, we kind of hear about it, and I think most people probably don't actively, at least a lot of people, unless you're in sales or you're a financial advisor and just trying to meet people, right? I think a lot of people don't really think about networking actively. I mean, I'll just kind of reflect on my own experience. I think about it, probably somewhere in between the full-time salesperson and the person who doesn't think about it. I'm somewhere in the middle, probably above average, right? In terms of the amount that I think of it. But whenever I consciously do it and really try to connect with people and offer them value and just really bring a caring mindset to it, really just trying to love people and help people, I always find that comes back to me in some positive way, just that the way I think about it and the mindset and actually actively seeking out connections or meaningful connections with people as opposed to just the card swap. I mean, have you experienced that? And do you have any, I don't know, stories or people that you maybe stories from your book or otherwise that might sort of demonstrate that?
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. So in sociology terms, we refer to a lot of times the value that lies in a network as social capital, right? Just like there is physical capital, assets and currency. There's human capital, which is your knowledge, skills, and abilities. And then there's social capital, which is the value in those connections, right? And we look at social capital from two different dimensions. On the whole societal level, communities that are more tightly intertwined benefit better and things move more efficiently, right? This is like if you think back to those neighborhoods where you know everybody, and if you are suddenly making a cake and you're out of sugar, you can go borrow a cup of sugar from the person next door. And then there's other communities that are almost social capital poverty, and you don't talk to anybody, you don't know anybody. Things move far less efficient. Now you got to drive all the way somewhere. And that's like a small scale example. It gets far more complicated than that. The other thing is just the value that it brings to you. The thing that I think is interesting is those two things are related, right? So we talk often, especially sort of on that sales side of network, of give value, give value, give value. But one of the best things that you can do is give value to the entirety of the network, not be so focused on that one person and always providing them information and keeping track of how much you provide them before you ask for something back. But just thinking about the network that's around you in totality, one of the best ways that you can strengthen it is by increasing the connections of people that are already there, right? In computer science, we call this Metcalfe's law, right? That the value of a network is proportional to the number of connections inside of it. So even just being the introducer, the person that makes it a regular habit of trying for maybe once a week or twice a week, trying to connect to people in your network, or really what I try and do a lot of times in my own life is when I'm in a conversation with somebody, whether they're a longtime friend of mine or they're a brand new person I've met with them, I'm not trying to think about what is that cool piece of information that I can wow them that I know. I'm trying to think, who do I know? Who's in my my close circle, who are my list of contacts that I know that I could introduce this person to that would provide value to them. And I'm doing that for two reasons. One, it is providing value to that one person, but it makes the whole network around me stronger because that new connection is made. Now, over time, you also get known as that person that connects lots of people. So when it comes time for you to ask for that introduction that you need, usually the network is a whole lot more ready to give it to you because they see you as that giving person.
It's interesting. I was talking to somebody recently about networking, and he was suggesting that, you already know enough people. It's not about, like you said, getting more contacts in your database and contacts on your phone and more business cards in your pocket. Leverage the people, not even leverage, maybe that's kind of a weird word to use there, but, reach out to and connect with the people and that are already in your network, and build stronger relationships. A few weeks ago, I started, I set a goal just for very informally, and I've failed miserably at keeping up with this, but I kind of do it in fits and starts. But I just scroll through my phone. I have way too many contacts in my phone. I had a Palm Pilot back in starting in 2003, I think it was. I had a Palm Pilot, and I've kept all my contacts. I've transferred them from device to device to device up until my iPhone 7 that I have now.
Wow, that's discipline. I love it.
Yeah, I'm pretty anal like that. So, I have way too many contacts, but I'm going to scroll through my phone and just find one person a day and kind of go through the alphabet and find one person a day, that I can just reach out to, not for business networking purposes, but just to show somebody that I care and that I'm thinking of them, and somebody who I haven't reached out to for a while. So, and I had to really sort of put the governor on in my mind in terms of not reaching out to purely business network with somebody. And I've flipped it and just made sure it was really out of love and out of caring and out of wanting to reconnect with somebody. And, interestingly, that's already brought some positive things my way. Outside of just the fact that I'm strengthening just sort of the community of people that I care about and that care about me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love it. So there's a couple things that right away when you're telling me that story that I'm thinking back to the network science and social science that we talk about in Friend of a Friend. The first is what we call multiplexity, this idea that we have a tendency to put people into one bucket, the work bucket or the personal bucket or the I see him at the gym bucket, right? And the truth is that when we draw diagrams of social networks, we encounter these multiplex ties, which are ties between two people where there's more than one reason for their connection. And multiplex ties are, first of all, they get deeper, stronger, right? This is why, with your friends, the people in the friendship bucket, to sort of ask around, ask way more than who are you and what do you do, ask a bunch of different questions so you can find a bunch of different connections and find a reason to kind of like each other. The weird thing is we do this with, with business contacts or personal contacts. We never think about the fact that the people that we know from a work setting can be our friends. Some of them in my life have turned into my best friends, right? And then the people from a friendship context, they still have access to new information that may help you on a business side. So eliminating that idea of putting them into the two buckets, I love that. That's a brilliant example. And the other thing that you're doing is you're making it a regular habit to reach back out to. In the sociology literature, we refer to these as weak ties or dormant ties, people that you do know, but they are somewhere else in the network, right? They're far away from you. They're not your close people. If you're drawing out this diagram, they're way off somewhere else. And because they're somewhere else, they're closer to lots of other people that you don't know. And that can be a source of new introductions, new information. And most of the time when we do studies of people's close contacts versus their weak ties, much more beneficial information, introductions, et cetera, come from those weak ties. So I love that idea of making it that habit. I do something similar. I don't go for once a day. You're a rock star. I go for about once a week. And when I tell you why, you'll know why, because it's a little bit harder, because I'm trying to do that value thing again. And it's kind of hard. Where most people I think fail in the habit is they go, okay, well, I know I need to reach out to this person. What do I say? And this is where I actually use Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, those sort of things for this, because my Facebook looks like your contacts app, right? I just say yes to everything, and my LinkedIn's the same way. It's 5,000 people. I don't know what most of them are doing from day to day. But if I open up the app and I scroll through the newsfeed, I see announcements that they're sharing, which means they're proud of it. And then I reach out to them on a deeper medium. This is the trick. Don't just click like. Don't just click comment. Those are like a huge deluge of information. If you've ever had a birthday on social media, you know you can't keep track of who's saying what to you. So I'll reach out with an email or a text message or a phone call, and I'll say something like, somebody just posts, we're headed to Maui in 2 weeks. We're so excited for our 15th wedding anniversary. And I'll write like, oh, hey, you've got to check out this restaurant, et cetera. But I'll do it in a medium where it's a little bit deeper, closer. So I'll send like an email or a text, and then I'll offer some piece of value, some information, some recommendation, something that tags on that thing that they're already announcing. So I already know that I'm providing that value. And then I'll usually sign almost every one of these emails or texts with, what else is new with you? Just using that as like the opening to a broader conversation to catch up with people.
Yeah. And for the listener, I just want to reiterate that what this comes down to is, I know you want to, write the next blog post or start the next business or get that next thing done that's on your to-do list or start that next project. I know you want to do all that stuff, but at the end of the day, people matter. Like people matter, right? They matter to you and you matter to them more than you realize. You're not, the social media birthday thing, I've as we record this, I've got a birthday coming up and I know I'm going to get a deluge of just a lot of people. But, it's kind of neat to hear from some of those folks who are those, what do you call them, dormant contacts. So people from far away that reach out to me and just say thank you. And especially if they say something a little bit extra, more than just like the happy birthday. But those are meaningful. Those are meaningful things. And in my program, David, it's called Reveal Your Path. And the thing that I teach in terms of the goal setting, relationships is number one. Relationships is number one. Second is self-growth and personal growth. Third is health and wellness. And fourth and finally, last is wealth in profession and career. And a lot of people flip that directly on their head and they want to start with money first, right? Well, flip it the other way around. And it's just amazing how life just becomes a little bit sweeter.
It's exactly right. And the other thing is, like, I get it. There's so much stuff to do. You got to write this piece. You got to do this thing, et cetera. But what you and I both talked about is our sort of habit. It's like 5 minutes a day, right? You waste more time playing Angry Birds on your phone than it would take to do this. So, and in, my method, it's 5 minutes a day, and 4 out of the 5 days, it's usually like, there's not really something there that I can do that's organic, that off the top of my head would work. So it's inauthentic. So I won't do it. It's not even like forcing myself to go look up on Yelp and find a restaurant in Maui just so I can make that recommendation. It's just, if one's there, if it comes into my mind, I do it. And if not, I try again tomorrow. And usually I end up hitting it about once, if not really 2 to 3 times a week because of that.
You talk about let's talk about your TED Talk. So you've had over 1.8 million views on your talk. You make an argument that everyone should know what each other makes in a company. And I was like, man, I was watching it. I was like, no way, man, this guy's crazy. And then the more you talked about it, the more I was like, this kind of actually makes sense. So Can you give the listener a synopsis? By the way, for the listener, I will in the action plan at jimharshawjr.com/action. I'll have a link to David's TED Talk, and he's done 3 of them, so I'll dig them all up and have all of them linked there. But the one about how everybody should know what each other makes in a company. Can you share with us a little bit about that talk?
Yeah, totally. Like you said, there's 3, and one has 1.8 million views. Combined, they all have 1.9 million views. So that shows you one of them is the one that people love to hate, and it's right. Exactly that idea. So in my previous book, Underdue Management, we started profiling companies that have a policy of salary transparency. And probably the biggest one in the United States that is totally transparent in salaries is Whole Foods. Actually, everybody knows. You can go on the intranet there and look up what people get paid. And you can also look up the performance data for their store and their department, so you can see whether or not they're worth that amount of money, right? The basic rationale of it is this, that most companies, let's say 99% of companies, are trying as hard as they can to have an equitable, fair system that rewards performance, that punishes inaction, right? They're trying to do it fairly. Some of them hit it, some of them don't, right? So not all companies have it, but 99% of them are actively trying. And if that's the situation that you're in, you actually better off making those efforts transparent than you are keeping them secret. The fear is that if you keep it secret, because if people find out, there'll be all sorts of chaos because they'll be mad that this person makes more than me, et cetera. The truth is that people do that anyway, even in a secret system, right? Somebody leaves a pay stub on the copier, right? Or people take, the worst thing is people start taking cues like, oh, so-and-so drives a Mercedes. Well, yeah, their wife might be a doctor. Like you can't use that as valid information. So there's actually a lot of the research suggests there's actually more discord in these secret companies because once there's a little drip of information, everybody's estimates go all out of whack and they're angry about it. If you flip to a transparent condition most of the time, and there's stages. I don't think like you go from secrecy just to posting a list on the refrigerator in the kitchen of here's what everybody gets paid, right? You go gradually through sort of a stage of transitions. But if you do it, what happens is one of two things, usually both. What happens is if people have an issue with how you're setting pay, they can now bring that up because they are it's an open topic inside the company now, and you can change your system to be more fair. Or if you already have that fair system and it is kind of at an optimal level, people go, oh, all right, well, that's why it is what it is. Now I know what to do to make more money, and now I'm going to go do that. And in fact, most of the companies that I looked at for the book and for the TED Talk, it was like, yeah, it was a big deal for like 2 weeks, and everybody was looking up everybody else, and then everybody went back to work because now they're like, all right, I trust that it's a fair system, and let's just get back to work.
And before I jump off topic one more time, can you share one? Let's go back to your book, the Friends of a Friend of a Friend, and yeah. Can you share with us just maybe one more main concept in the book that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, so we talked about a couple sort of actions that you can put into place. The reaching back out to dormant ties is a huge one. Going to not those cocktail parties, but the mixers, right? Or going to shared activities, not the mixers where people are doing something bigger. The other thing that I like to coach a lot of people to do is to start asking a regular question when they have conversations with people, not because you're asking for an introduction, but because you're trying to get a better map on the network that you're in. Asking the question, who do you know in blank? With blank being whatever industry, geography, ideology, right? Political party, whatever you're trying to meet more people in. You're not asking for the introduction. You're just trying to get a feel for who do I already have a connection to should I need it so that I know who's 1 degree of separation out from me. And sometimes it'll be because I need to actually get that introduction. But I don't like to do that thing where people wait until they desperately need an introduction. Then they LinkedIn stalk somebody to see who they're connected to. Then they beg for an introduction to that person. I mean, first, it makes everyone uncomfortable. But the other thing is that might not even be the right person. So when you ask, who do you know in blank, you're surveying people and you usually get a list of different names, all of whom it's like you don't necessarily need to ask for an introduction, but it's good to know that that person is 1 degree of separation out from me should I ever use it or should I ever have something that's helpful for them.
And this next question is going to be, again, a little bit off the topic of networking, but I saw this and I know you talk about this and I really wanted to, this is sort of a subject that's close to my heart in terms of focus and productivity. But you've talked about how some companies are banning email and they're getting more done. Email is a huge time suck. It's a huge, it's a tool. Obviously, it's a tool, and it's a very effective tool. But it can also be something that I think shifts people's mindset into a reactive mode instead of a proactive mode. But tell me about some of these companies and why this actually might work.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a number of companies that are doing it voluntarily. Interestingly enough, there's this other sort of regulatory debate that's going on. As we're recording this, New York City is debating a rule that would ban employers from having their employees check email after hours, right? Which is, sometimes you hear that and you think like, that's weird. It's salary, right? You're supposed to be on the clock all the time. Well, the truth is I'm more interested in the companies that are voluntarily doing it because what they're seeing is that exactly what you've said. It flips people into reactive mode. And by some studies, if you are interrupted, right, from doing that sort of deep work that actually creates value, then it takes about 20 to 21 minutes to get back to the level of focus that you were at before you get interrupted. Yeah. Now think about your phone and your Outlook and all that sort of, it's usually set to check for mail every 5 minutes, right? So if you're getting a new email every 5 minutes, you're going through the whole day and you're like, you're not actually getting anything productive done. You might feel that way because, man, I got to inbox 0. But did you actually move the ball forward at all? Probably not, right? And so we're seeing a trend of a lot of companies that are either encouraging no email whatsoever or encouraging batch times or silent times. Like some companies will do like, hey, on Thursday we have no meetings and we send no emails and you just work on your project, right? I'm more interested in what people can do individually. So one of the things I started it when I was researching the book because I thought I need to put this into practice, myself. I don't really work for a company where I can do this. So I went to what I call the 2-device strategy. So I have an iPhone and an iPad. The iPhone has my email on it, my social media accounts, all of that sort of stuff. The iPad has just like iBooks and Netflix and kind of content consumption stuff, so that if I wanted to watch something or whatever, it's there. And so what I do is when I wake up in the morning, I go and grab my phone and I go to work, or really whenever it is that I'm going to work. I grab my phone. When I come home, I switch them, right? So I go to where it is I'm charging. I charge them, both one at a time off the same cord, so that when I'm done, I take the phone, I dock it, and I take the iPad out, and now I don't have access to my email, to social media, any of that stuff again.
Great tactic. And I know a lot of the folks that I coach are always looking for tactics like that to sort of help them put the phone down, help them, be more productive, help them turn off work and be locked in on their families when they're at home. And that's a great strategy for that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it'll drive you nuts for the first week, but then it'll change your life.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. David, you've been very successful. You've spoken to Fortune 500 leaders of Fortune 500 companies, and you've written multiple books. You have a very, very popular TED Talk. Can you take us inside your world during a time where you may have failed, a time where you failed, and as a result, you felt that hopelessness or that overwhelming self-doubt that only comes from a failure, and how you maybe work through that?
Yeah. I mean, on one level, I fail every single day, right? I go to the gym. I do jiu-jitsu about 11 a.m. every morning. Literally today, I made the mistake trying to pass a guard. I got caught in a hammerlock. It really sucked. So on that small level, right? And we have a saying in jiu-jitsu that it's not, you don't win or lose, it's win or learn, right? But that you're probably not interested in me getting in a hammerlock. I think probably the best, one of the biggest ones that was, well, let's say relatively recent. It was actually about 5 years ago. It was before I had any books out. I had the podcast. I was putting out content in the form of articles and little instructional videos and that kind of stuff. And I got an email from a speaker bureau, right? These are the people that usually either represent you for inbound gigs, so they help take care of all the logistics and negotiation, or they're actively pushing you out to their clients as you really want this guy to speak at your conference. And for a business book writer, this is actually the bigger source of revenue than getting a book deal, right? So I get this email from a speaker bureau, one of the top like 5 in the country, and they say like, hey, we noticed on your site, we saw your speaking page, etc. We'd love to talk about representing you. Why don't you send us a couple clips and your rate sheet, and we'll get back to you. So I was like super excited. Remember, the email came in about like 4 p.m. I'm super excited. I didn't have a rate sheet though. I didn't really have any clips. I had like my speaker bio. The truth was I had probably only ever been paid like an honorarium of $1,000 when I was putting that sort of thing up there. So I did what I figured was appropriate, right? And I guessed at rates for these certain things, and I wrote out these descriptions, whatever, and I sent it off to them at about, I worked from like 4 to probably 11:30 at night to get all this stuff prepped. Right. But then I didn't want to look desperate. So I waited till 8 in the morning to send it. So I didn't look desperate by sending it at 11:30. And I heard nothing. Literally, like they just ghosted me, right? They just took it. And clearly what happened was that I sent them off a rate sheet and a description of stuff that was just totally unfeasible for their model. That was probably way lower, because to me, I was like, I'll fly anywhere and speak for $1,000. It'd be great. That's not really what a speaker bureau wants to hear. They want a little bit higher. They want to know you understand audiences and meeting planners a bit better. All of this was stuff I didn't know at all, right? And so it kind of came upon me that like, well, if this is something I want to do and add to my business model, this is probably something I should have been researching way more instead of just waiting to get that kind of an email. So I set about trying to talk to as many people. I had previously been hosting a podcast where I'm talking to authors about a bunch of different stuff and learning how to be a business book author, but I didn't learn this other side. And so I went back to a lot of those people that had allowed me to kind of pick their brain and said, can I talk to you about this? Can I talk to you about the speaking thing, whatever? And over probably the next 3 or 4 months after getting ghosted from them, I learned that I made like 17 different mistakes in my response to that, right? And so I started going to work on that. I started going to work getting on a really good clip of me speaking. I started making the rate sheet a little more feasible. I started making sure that my page was designed really well. And what ended up happening was, even before the first book was set to come out, I started then asking those same people. This goes back to that relationships piece, who their bureau was, who do they know in blank, who do they know in speaker bureaus, et cetera, and got a couple introductions and ended up talking one bureau into representing me before I even had a book, before I had any of the media attention from that first book, et cetera. They were just kind of like, yeah, we'll take the risk. You seem like you've got everything together, so this is probably a pretty safe bet. We'll go ahead and sign on and do it. And I'm still with that bureau because I'm loyal to a fault a lot of times, but it was more because I took the time to figure out out like I clearly don't understand this and that's why I failed. And I need to reach out to lots of other people to figure out, like, teach me what I need to know about this so that I can be better prepared the next time an email like that comes in.
And for the listener, the lesson there is you learn by doing, you learn by failing, you learn by putting one foot in front of the other, and sometimes you just stumble and fall and you look stupid and you feel silly and you make a mistake. But that's how you learn. Now you're, a lot of people at that point, they quit or they give up or they lower their goals, they lower their expectations. But in contrast, you're actually more qualified after that. You were actually more qualified to do the thing, right? You learned, you made a mistake, you did the research, you corrected, you created a rate sheet, you have the better clips, et cetera, and now you're prepared, right? So now that failure was required for you to get to the next step. And I'm talking to a guy yesterday, a client of mine, and he's really nervous about this conversation. As a matter of fact, I got to follow up with him today and shoot him a text and see how it went. But he was really nervous about this conversation he was going to have. And it was kind of like the first conversation, right, of this sort of new business that he wants to start. And I'm like, you know what, man, you're going to go in and it's going to go just fine. It may or may not go perfectly, but it's going to be a learning experience for you. And after you do this a second time and a third time and a fourth time, the fifth discussion you have about this, you're gonna be way better than your first one. It's like the founder of LinkedIn said, if you're not embarrassed by your first iteration, you started way too late. And I think that lesson applies here.
Yeah. Oh no, totally. I mean, we have a saying in jiu-jitsu that like the black belt isn't the person that's been doing it for 10 years. I mean, that's true, but it's the person that's tapped 10,000 times, right? Yeah. That's gotten caught and then had the presence of mind to go, well, wait, why did that happen? Like backtrack. I'm not going to get angry, right? I'm going to go back and go, why did that happen? Oh, I had my knee over here and that put me off balance and they took advantage of it. That's the big key, is to go, why did that happen? So yeah, he's going to fail. He's going to stumble 4 or 5 times. And every time he gets out of those calls, he should go back and think and do like a postmortem. Like, what happened? Why did that go wrong? Where did I feel uncomfortable, et cetera? And then how can I strengthen those areas?
Yep. That's the exact conversation I had with him. Yeah.
Love it.
And so, David, can you recommend a tool or a tactic or a technology or an app or a supplement or something that you do or use that you feel makes you more effective as a person, as a businessman, as a husband, as a father, et cetera? Something that you can recommend to the listener.
Yeah. So, I mean, from a gadget or a tool standpoint, I got to sing the praises of the 2-device strategy, but I'll tell you another one that's sort of a habit or a hack or a thing that we've been doing. And this was a default. Like, I didn't realize how powerful this was until probably 18 months after we started doing it, which was, I have 2 kids, I have 2 boys. We put them to bed every night. And I think my wife's family started to do this. And that's why it became a habit for our family, is we ask them kind of one question as we're putting them to bed. We ask them, what was the favorite part of your day? Right. And when they're 2 and 3, it's cool because they tell us and we want them to preach like gratitude or whatever. When they turn, like when the oldest one turned 5, he started asking me that. Like they won't go to bed until they ask us and we also answer.
Wow.
Right?
Cool.
Which basically means that like I wake up and I go, all right, I got to have a favorite part of my day today. Like this one's going to ask me at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
I better have an answer. Right. Which allows you to sort of slow down. I mean, one, there's the reflection and the gratitude piece, but it also sort of like, I can't waste today. I got to do something cool for a 6-year-old. And it turns out that most of the things that a 6-year-old finds cool are also pretty cool. So I end up having kind of a better, more productive, happier day because of this one question. What was the favorite part of your day?
Excellent. I think the listeners are going to love that one. David, how about an action item in the next 24 to 48 hours? An action item that the listener can use. Maybe it's around networking. Maybe it's something totally different, but something they can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to really start moving towards their goals.
Yeah, so I am really going to highly recommend that sort of Facebook trip. You can do the scroll through your contacts like you do trick. I'm going to highly recommend that Facebook trip. Get on it. I mean, I know there's a lot of people right now preaching the whole like get off it, it's too distracting, whatever. Get on it. If you need it, set a timer and say like, okay, set timer for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to scroll through and find some reason that someone you don't talk to often is doing something you can connect and add value to, and then shoot them an email or a text or a phone call. It could be a vacation, it could be a work thing, whatever it is, whatever's that reason that you can start a new conversation with them. Use the information they're already broadcasting out there in the world and want to share as the reason to start a conversation with a person you haven't talked to in a long time.
Excellent advice. David, I'm going to have a link to your books in the action plan for the listener. So go to jimharshawjr.com/action to get links to the books, links to his TED Talks, and everything else that we talked about here. David, can you take a minute and just promote yourself? Tell the listener how they can find you, follow you, etc.
Yeah. So, the absolute best place to find me is probably davidburkus.com. But if you've been listening to this for a super long time, I've got a cool gift for you. And it's also, I hope we'll put it in the action plan too. If you go to davidburkus.com/success through failure, we've got this really cool audio course you can download. It's a couple minutes, but it teaches you how to give and get the introductions that you need. And if you've been listening to this whole time, I know that you love audio and love podcasts. So we put it in that format for that specific reason.
Right.
Totally free. I mean, obviously, I hope you're going to like it and buy the book, but even if you're not, you're going to get a tremendous amount of value out of that. And tell me and tell Jim how much you liked it.
Yeah, excellent. And for the listener, I will have that link in the action plan. But again, that was davidburkus.com/success through failure. But I'll have that in the action plan. jimharshawjr.com/action. That's enough URLs for now, right? For the listener. David, thanks so much for making time to come on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for what you're doing and for having me as a part of it.
For the listener, until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.